Hiya, I'm Ben Shepherd, my tutor is Nicola Ashmore, and in this presentation I'll be discussing the contemporary art critic and historian Yates McKee's strike art in relation to Hans Haacke's Solomon R. Guggenheim Board of Trustees to understand how the principles of institutional critique can apply in the context of different artists' work. Among other research and social goals, McKee's strike art seeks to, quote, interrogate who or what constitutes a movement at all. However, McKee writes that linked under the umbrella dual action, quote, negation and affirmation of art itself, end quote, institutional critique is characterised, quote, across a wide diversity of tactics. I'll be investigating the ways that McKee's theory applies to Hans Haacke's Guggenheim Board of Trustees, exploring how he used his own tactics, whether they fit into McKee's analysis neatly or not. Interestingly, McKee states that a key element of strike art is that the intervention works within the location of the establishment, while also fighting against what the establishment stands for. The example he uses to exemplify this is the global ultra-luxury faction's intervention on the Guggenheim in 2014. Thousands of illustrated dollar bills depicting the 1%, a poignant socio-economic and political symbol, especially at the time, were thrown from the Guggenheim, figure 3. The bills also illustrate the Guggenheim's involvement in the, quote, abhorrent labour conditions on Sadia Island, as shown in figure 4. Gulf used the stage of the Guggenheim to accentuate their message against its lack of transparency. McKee's theory is that strike art both distances itself from, quote, traditional art history and draws attention to the benefit of, quote, the reinvention of art as direct action and collective effect. The incendiary message on the notes, equating the Guggenheim to the atrocities in Abu Dhabi, disrupted the elite public image of the Guggenheim, Wall Street, and the contemporary art world. Simultaneously, distributing the art to the public in generous quantities created a, quote, positive aesthetic experience based on neither the, quote, luxury consumption characteristics of Abu Dhabi nor the, quote, deadened spectatorial routines of the museum itself. The work directly attacks the ideals of a modern museum while proposing a better alternative to the museum goers. Figure 5, Solomon R. Guggenheim Board of Trustees by Hans Haacke, is at the surface level incredibly different to the Gulf intervention. The artwork is a 7-part silkscreen ink print installation displayed roughly eye level in a row in a space on the wall. There's a sizable negative space around the work. The work itself consists purely of black text on white paper. All text is centrally aligned with emboldened headings detailing the information below. This chosen presentation allows the viewer to concentrate on what they're seeing compared to a more complex format of displaying the information. The visual language of the prints both contextualizes the work as a legal document / official form and forces the viewer to question why this type of document would be presented in this setting. John Tyson, author of The Context as Host, Hans Haacke's Art of Textual Exhibition, elaborates that, quote, printed on the white page, Haacke's pieces are perhaps as effective as works exhibited in the white cube. In this way, the context is the social system that Haacke's talking about. There's no alt text included expressing an opinion. The plaques simply list out names, dates of birth, and places of residence of corporate affiliations of the trustees of the museum. The gallery label only adds the context of Haacke creating the work in response to the Guggenheim cancelling Haacke's previous exhibition because, quote, his active engagement towards social and political ends contradicted the museum's mission. It continues that, quote, the work prompted viewers to consider the relationship between cultural institutions and the entities that finance them. It can be said that McKee is referencing the highlighting of this relationship when he mentions political subjectivization as a possible, quote, reinvention of art. It's useful to approach this premise as applied to Figure 6, Sapolsky et al., the art piece that was censored as part of Haacke's Guggenheim exhibit. The reason for the rejection of Haacke's exhibition is identified by Jack Burnham, one of the driving forces of the systems art movement, as due to its lack of expressed opinion, a noted similarity between the rejected Sapolsky et al., Figure 6, and Guggenheim Board of Trustees. By neutrally presenting the information available and letting the public interact with it to represent the, quote, social system, Haacke brings political subjectivization into the museum. The director of the Guggenheim, Thomas Messer, claims that presenting the information on the building societies was an attempt by Haacke to, quote, name and publicly expose individuals and companies whom he considers to be at fault. However, Tyson reveals that the information is in the public domain, and Haacke even subsequently censored their names, so it doesn't seem as if Haacke's doing anything more than bringing the truth of social issues to a wider audience. Jack Burnham goes on to say that, quote, when the museum specifies that it's not competent to analyse social problems, the information in Sapolsky et al., what it's saying in effect is that the artist has overstepped his bounds. The censorship can be seen as evidence that Haacke has accomplished the reinvention that McKee references, since traditional avenues entirely reject it. Guggenheim Board of Trustees identically acts as a neutral party to introduce political subjectivization of the subject matter to the viewer. Therefore, even though it was not displayed in the Guggenheim, nor banned like the Golf action or Sapolsky et al., it can be said to perform this reinvention aspect of institutional critique. The other half of the dual action of McKee's institutional critique is, quote, the unmaking of art as it exists within the discourses, economies, and institutions of the contemporary art system. It could be seen, as writer Ben Davis did, that since Guggenheim Board of Trustees was not displayed within the museum setting like the Golf intervention or even Sapolsky et al., it's not, quote, classic type institutional critique. Sapolsky et al. Was censored for operating outside of the systems of institution that strike art wants to dismantle, and as Haacke's close friend Howard Wise states, quote, the directors now become part of the work of art, end quote. The museum's censorship adds to the message of the work. Guggenheim Board of Trustees seems not to operate in this way. However, it is useful to note the underlying principle of affirmation and negation that McKee adds to his definition. If the affirmation is the reinvention of art and that the work is located inside a museum, then it follows that the negation is the unmaking of art, in this case of the associated institutions, and acting outside of the capacity of the museum. In this way, we can link Haacke's exit from the traditional space as further bolstering of his unmaking of the traditional institutions for contemporary art, almost as if to say we don't need you anymore. This is greatly in keeping with the spirit of, quote, not conforming to the spectatorial routines of museums mentioned by McKee in reference to golf. In conclusion, although Guggenheim Board of Trustees uses much different tactics to accomplish it, I think that the sequence quite elegantly falls into McKee's definition of institutional critique, contrary to some interpretations. It both unmakes the false hierarchy of contemporary art institutions by both abandoning them and denouncing them, and reimagines the way that art can be used as political subjectivization via bringing a neutral party into the exhibition space. McKee's analysis of what creates effective strike art can extend between both interventions in museums and texture work in the private sector. Thanks for listening.